This reminds me of my first experience in radio. It was back in the early 80s.
People with disability and mental health.
There's always controversy with us.
The mysteries of the mind and consciousness.
And we might get to the bottom of something, or we might start something new.
We're going to run the gamut and we're going to have a good time.
Waking Braves. No, not Waking Braves. We're Breaking Waves.
Breaking waves?
Breaking waves.
Breaking waves!
Greetings, peoples of Sydney.
I am Riley.
And I am John.
And today we are bringing you a show about the walkers, the wanderers,
The drifters,
the hobos,
the nomads, the gypsies, the swagmen.
Have you ever been a nomad, John?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think we're all kind of nomads when we leave home, sort of thing, you know, to a degree. Certainly I was kind of no fixed address for a while. And certainly I've travelled around a lot. It's actually, interestingly, my nomadic life was revolved around working.
You joined the circus. Not actually, but the music business,
That's
which is
it.
its own kind of circus.
That's what it was like, because I kind of escaped my family life and ran away and joined the circus, sort of thing, and worked in the music biz, and that took me all over the place. And you know, home was where the floor is. What about you? Have you lived a nomad life?
Oh, definitely. Really, since I was 15, I stopped staying at the family home, and I'd stay at different friends' houses and relatives, and I've kind of been that way ever since, though I have had places, and I'm going to get another place soon, but I mostly would, just use them as a base, like somewhere to keep my stuff, because even though I move around a lot, I also have my creature comforts, and, I like to collect books and DVDs and things like that, and I like to I've got a lot of clothes as well. That's the draw, but can be a drawback to the transient ways, is it's not good for your material possessions, because you got to lug it around, or you got to have somewhere to put it.
What does the interwebs say about the term? How do they define this idea, this concept of nomadic people?
Yeah, it's an
Because I
interesting.
haven't looked it up.
It's an interesting term. Well, let's see what they say on the Oxford Dictionary. A member of a people that travels from place to place to find fresh pasture for its animals and has no permitted home. And they use the example, the withering of their grasslands forced the nomads of the Sahara to descend into the Nile. Interesting that in this example it's like a forced thing rather than a choice. So it's like a resource-based motivation.
Does it give another definition, an alternate? Has it got a 2 and a 3, or is it just kind of stick with that definition of tribes of people?
Well,
Ethnic
it also just says a person who does not stay long in the same place, a wanderer.
Right. Now, culturally, there's been all kinds of nomadic peoples, and we're told Genghis Khan and his mob were lived a nomadic lifestyle, living in tents. How true that was, I don't know, but
Yeah.
there's a long list of culturally nomadic people, and the first ones that pop into my mind are the gypsies.
That's
you
right,
know.
the Romani people
Yes. Who
Who-
actually, I think, go on.
still exist. Is that what you mean? Go on.
No, I was going to say they came from Pakistan, I think. Weirdly, somewhere in India is the Romani people came from. But yeah, gypsies. I remember hearing about gypsies as a little kid.
Well, it's interesting how the gypsies the kind of stereotypes associated with them are really like denigrating, and they're associated with these like the idea of people who are trying to like scam you, and or the even worse, the idea of like the gypsy's curse and these kind of things. Maybe it's that I get that from so much horror, that I...
Yeah, I'm thinking about that story about the guy that got thinner, got cursed by the gypsy, the Stephen King story.
That's
right.
Absolutely,
they got bad press, right? Why is that? Because governments generally don't like people who behave like that. Gypsies don't conform to the kind of societal standards and protocols and stuff. They like to wander and they like to do their own thing, and they don't like to be nailed down or be accountable. So they're very independent kind of folk, and they generally don't, and they're demonised, I'd say, generally. If you think about the Jewish people, they're probably the largest tribe of gypsies that ever was.
Yes, that's right.
They're everywhere.
In fact, that brings me to the legend of the wandering Jew. Have you heard this legend?
Well, it's a plant, I know that.
I didn't know that.
Wandering Jew, yeah.
But apparently this figure is an immortal, and it comes from a legend from Europe in the 13th century. So the original legend has it that this Jew who taunted Jesus while he was on the way to get crucified was cursed to walk the earth until the second coming. And, the nature of this indiscretion changes in various renditions of the tale. But a lot of the time, it's this kind of idea of the salesman or like a snake oil salesman. And I've heard that Stephen King story, Needful Things, compared to that Wandering Jew archetype as well. But
Needful Things, that's great. That's about the demon that comes to town and preys on everybody's secret desires and their...
Needful Things, the story in that is quite similar to a novel by Ray Bradbury from the early 60s called Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is about a carnival that comes into town and does a similar kind of thing. It preys upon people's insecurities and hidden desires and things like that. And what they suggest in this story is that these beings or these wandering entities have been around since time immemorial, like back in the days of when people were walking around with animal pelts, they were still wandering, trying to exploit people.
Yeah, and I guess, back in time, there's a lot more possible for people to wander around the earth. In this modern time where everything is stitched up, sewed down and owned, every little centimetre has been surveyed and so we're told and controlled by governments who define these countries or nations, these borders established everywhere. The gypsy life has become more difficult. They would find it difficult to cross borders now.
Yeah.
So I guess they just gypsy around in the countries that they're in.
The context in which the nomadic life is more acceptable is when it comes in the form of entertainment. So if you are a musician or a comedian or you're some kind of carnival or circus or something like that, then it's expected that you're going to be traveling around to make your trade. But if you're someone who's not working very much, that's a different kind of thing. And interestingly enough, John, there's actually different factions within homeless people, and there's like certain homeless people that are nomadic. Like there's nomadic tribes of homeless people, like the rainbow people and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Within societies there are nomadic types of people. I think the other thing about the modern world is that you could argue it actually facilitates travel because we can now go places much more easily than anybody could in the past. You had to get on a ship or walk, so travel is easier. And in fact, I was just thinking, I think I actually met a couple of gypsies yesterday when I was walking my dog. They were from the Czech Republic. And I got to talking to them. They were very friendly. Their English was quite bad. They said they'd just been to Fiji and they just told me all these places with their dog. It was so weird. I was talking to them about all of the hoops they had to jump through and get there and all the injections their dog had to have to do all this travelling with them. But, yeah, I guess that they're an example of modern nomads or people that just decide to pull the anchor in and walk the earth. And where you can do that if you're brave enough.
That's right. There's it's a double-edged sword, like everything in life, because we're definitely presented with the idea in society, in the kind of society that we grew up in, that to be a fully actualized person, to be complete, to be whole, you need to have a house and you need to have stuff. And if you don't have those things, then you can't possibly be fulfilled in life. I mean, that's really...
Yeah, I definitely remember this. I remember how proud I was when I first got a credit card. I felt like I'd become a citizen or something, the trappings of, being a bona fide person in a legal sense, I guess.
And there's a certain dream of being a retiree, and it's like, okay, I've had the family and got the pension and everything, and now let's set up in the Winnebago and travel around.
Yeah, that's something people do, hey? The caravans of retirees in their camper vans, travelling around the countryside. I guess they're people that have fulfilled all of that. They've ticked all the boxes. They've, got married, had kids, bought a house, brought up their kids, paid super, had a job, retired. What do we do now? We could do what we want. Let's become nomads.
It's interesting how a lot of the characters that appeal most to children are nomadic. I guess it's that sense of adventure, but like cowboys and pirates or knights and, this idea of like going on a quest and getting into more like specific fictional characters. Actually, there's Jack Reacher who, that's one of the joys of those books is how he sort of explains his lifestyle, saying, well, think about all the money I'd be spending on a mortgage and paying bills and this and that. And really the way that he lives is more simple, more manageable for him. And Jack Reacher was inspired, of course, by Rambo and a series from the 60s of Travis McGee books by John D. MacDonald, but also inspired by mythological figures like the Japanese Ronin or the errant knight from the medieval literature. But then, of course, there's a lot of characters that are nomads that I didn't even think about being nomads, like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. Doctor Who is a great one. And even Scooby-Doo as well. The mystery team, they live in the van, the mystery machine, and just ride around in that. So, yeah, there's actually a bunch of them. And also the Incredible Hulk TV show from the 70s with Lou Ferrigno. Every episode of that ended with him wandering down the highway trying to hitch a ride. And so this is a fantasy that appealed to children, and it makes sense. I think it's a very Gen X kind of thing.
These characters like Rambo and Jack Reacher, they have certain personality traits. They are chronic nonconformists who just want to be left alone to do their thing.
That's right. They don't want to buy in. They don't want the gold watch or the company car, and they don't want to have to prove themselves to anyone.
And actually, I think a lot of these type of characters, both fictional and real, they actually can't fit in. They actually don't fit in, and I can kind of relate to this myself, because I've always felt like a bit of an outsider, a bit uncomfortable with the fact that I don't feel like I fit in anywhere. So
there's the promise of adventure that comes along with that idea as well, and I think that's why this fantasy resonates with so many people. There's a lot of people that are doing, struggling to pay the bills and the mortgage and everything, and thinking, God, I wish I could just leave all this behind tomorrow and wander off with no destination in mind and all the time in the world to get there.
This is a nice fantasy, but it's also a terribly scary idea to a lot of people who need security, who get a lot of comfort from their job, their salary, all of their commitments, their completely full schedule.
Yes.
It's to live a life without all of those kind of restrictions opens you up to a lot of possibilities, but also opens you up. You have to embrace the unknown. And this is terrifying to a lot of people. And I think Nomads have a great, a better kind of perhaps a more healthy relationship with the vast ocean of the unknown and the unknowable. But that's like the definition of courage. It's not people who don't get scared. It's people who are scared and they move forward anyway, regardless of their fear.
That's right.
So perhaps these nomads, a lot of them are courageous people, including a lot of the people that don't seem to fit in. A lot of these characters in our society that are like Reacher and Rambo and gypsies and Jews. They're demonized
Yes.
by the mob because they're different.
Yeah, and it's harder for them to fit into the system. Like, if someone's trying to subpoena this person, well, where are they going to go to serve them? What address are they going to send the documents to?
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. It's like you try and talk to an agent of the government, like a policeman or any bureaucrat. They will insist that you have to have an address, that you have to have one, even if you don't. And so a lot of people, particularly nomads, they are no fixed address. They don't have an address. This is not acceptable. It's not. It's beyond their definition of what a person is, which interestingly is not what you would think in a legal sense. The definition of a person is not necessarily a living thing, but that's
another story.
it's another show, folks.
Okay. On the topic of, we were mentioning before, of Genghis Khan, maybe the whole nomadic thing makes more sense from the perspective of if you're drilling down into biology and the idea that there's this human impulse to spread your seed. Maybe the nomadic idea is something that facilitates that propagation more.
Well, from a genetic viewpoint, you definitely get better genes. This is the narrative is that if you get more mixed up diversity in your genetics, you're going to have more robust, healthy, better versions of people. This is why inbreeding is not a good thing, because you're not going to produce the best quality human beings if you...
just keep it within the same tribe.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Interestingly, there's a bit of that goes on, particularly in royalty. A lot of these very rich families, they're very much into...
they're ugly white people
marrying their cousins.
That's why they're
It ain't only the hillbillies that...
Yeah. Now, in Australia, we have some nomadic traditions. The idea of bush rangers and what was the other one you said? Swagman.
Swagman. Great. Look, it's in our unofficial national anthem.
Waltzing Matilda.
Waltzing Matilda. We've got Swagman. There he is, and that was a way of life for a lot of people in Australia. 100, 200 years ago, people used to just walk the earth.
And there's the tradition as well within Aboriginal people of the idea of going walkabout. And I think a big part of that is that you don't know where you're going, but you're following a vibe. You're sort of following where the energy will take you. And I've heard that you can tap into this. It's one of the sort of spiritual traditions of this place that can be quite rich for people when they do tap into it.
I guess a lot of cultures, indigenous peoples of different lands, it was kind of easy for them to adopt this kind of lifestyle. One, because for actually just subsistence, they had to follow the food, depending on what they were living on, and also they didn't have a lot of things. They didn't have a lot of stuff to drag around. I mean, look at us these days.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you're a prisoner in your home.
Yeah.
I mean, we all it's the dream of everybody, but really it's a little prison because you kind of, unless you can buy another one and another one, you're kind of locked in, and all your possessions become a huge problem for you if you have to move. They're like, you have to protect them and guard them, and one of the great things about the Aboriginal tribes that I've met is they're not really that attached to possessions like we are. You can misinterpret this as in different ways. They're very big on sharing, and they're very big on asking you if you're finished with something, can I have that? And it's weird to us because when you come from a culture where everybody owns stuff, and it's not common to go up and ask people for things unless you're like a beggar or, you're after a cigarette or something like that. It's not that usual, but for them it's completely normal because they kind of like have this culture of sharing. And I think that the colonists found this quite strange, this kind of behaviour, because they didn't understand why these communities of people, they just shared everything. They would just share all their money and all their possessions, and it didn't make any sense to Westerners.
I've had people with Aboriginal heritage tell me that they sometimes get this really overwhelming impulse to just drop everything and go bush. Yeah, so as I say, it's a double-edged sword because there's that uncertainty about it, but then the benefit is that you are free from the same slavery of having to meet the requirements of paying for your little box or your cubicle or whatever it might be.
There's definitely a freedom to the nomad life.
Yes.
To casting aside the shackles, but there's a price. It's not an easy life. And, the way things are going, you will be persecuted and you will be tracked down and hassled everywhere you go.
You have to be the kind of person who's quite thick-skinned and impervious to this stuff. And another idea that we haven't mentioned yet as well is the idea of bike gangs as well.
Absolutely, the Nomads are actually a bikie gang, and there's many bikies, and they're a good example of a tribe of people like gypsy. They're a kind of a gypsy-like people who they're definitely counterculture. They're definitely nonconformists who want to do things, and they call themselves the 1%. They're very proud of their independence and their lifestyle and their philosophy of life. Bikies, and much demonised, particularly if you live in Queensland. At the moment, I don't think Melbourne's that much better. It's actually illegal to have to wear colours, to wear a jacket with your club colours on them now, which is quite strange to make a jacket illegal. But, we're in the age of
strange laws.
Clothing police, yeah.
May you live in interesting times. You know, it's a weird law when it's like, how can they actually practically police that or implement that? And there's definitely a lot of that going
It
on.
makes for good comedy when someone records them trying to enforce those kind of laws. Now, there is a historical narrative about a group of people called the Sea People who inundated countries and caused huge changes. This is mythical story. This is going back a very long way, and the debate has always been who these Sea People were and where did they come from. But it's interesting, it like resonates in my head at the moment because we've, I think many countries, because of a lot of the open border policies of the last few years, have experienced probably exactly what happened maybe all those millennia ago when people were invaded by sea people. We've had the same thing. We've had 2 million new Australians in our country in the last few years. And it's been going on in other countries too. And it's been interesting to notice some backflip on their policies and shut their borders up once the chaos that ensues. A lot of countries did that in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and certainly during COVID, we saw how easy it is for the borders to be closed. Just shut off like a cipher. It was the first time that it ever happened in my lifetime, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't think I've been around for any border closures. It was definitely a first.
But they're open again now, and so John, do you see yourself ever at your age doing the nomad thing? I mean, how does the idea? You did it when you were younger, and with the whole working with music, but what about for this time? Would you ever embrace that way of life again, do you think?
Yeah, become a retiree nomad. Well, you know, I've actually got practical problems getting around now, and this makes my world a lot smaller. Certainly, I haven't done much roaming since I became low vision, which is about 20 years ago. Yeah, embrace the nomad spirit, become a wanderer again, walk the earth. I like the idea, I really do. I could do it. I'd like to do it. How about you?
I mean, I think I'm definitely scared of the idea. I don't really have the travel bug so much. I feel quite dependent on the ties and the connections that I have in this city. So the idea of...
Yeah, you're like a city gypsy.
Yes. But I think that there could be something to be said for maybe that's where I'll find success.
Broader horizons, mate.
Yes, in
Await you.
foreign worlds.
Off-world.
Yeah, that's what it comes up in the when I go look into like astrology and stuff of my birth chart. There's a lot of stuff that says, you know, we'll find success in foreign lands, and so maybe it is in the cards for me.
In your future.
Yes. But we've reached the end of the program, folks. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll be on a break after this one, but we'll be back in 6 weeks' time, hopefully.
We will be back. Peoples of Sydney. Stay safe.
Sayonara.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to People Powered Radio, proudly supported by the Community Broadcasting Foundation. The Community Broadcasting Foundation resources community-owned and operated media stations just like this one that connect people and tell vital, local stories so that we all enjoy a more vibrant, inclusive Australian culture and healthy democracy. Find out more about our work at cbf.com.au.